Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. Is your firm's tech stack ready to bid on new infrastructure work? This event is brought to you by ENR, and it's sponsored by Loadspring. Thanks, everyone, for joining us. I'm Eileen Cho, Senior Transportation Editor for Engineering News Record, and I'm your moderator for today's presentation. With a big federal infrastructure spend expected sometime in the next year, contractors, engineers, and other firms may find that some state and federal owners are asking for more digital-focused bid packages. During this webinar, we'll talk to industry firms and experts about how some DOTs and agencies are moving towards better digital project management and how to be ready to bid on new work. Before I introduce our panelists, I'd like to welcome Jim Smith, Executive Vice President of Cloud Solutions and founder of Loadspring. Over to you, Jim.
Thank you, Eileen, and thank you, ENR, for the opportunity to hear from our expert panel today. Hi, everyone. It's great to see so many familiar names on the Q&A and chat list. I look forward to traveling to an in-person conference soon and seeing you all in real life again. I promise not to take up too much time, as we're all here to learn from Brandon, Greg, and Chris. So I lead Loadspring's Cloud Solutions team and spend my time ensuring customers get the security, performance, and support they require to successfully win and execute projects in the cloud. You're going to hear these three words multiple times today as we talk about tech stacks. Security, performance, and support have been the pillars of Loadspring's platform. Now, this is how we protect your intellectual property and power your projects. Ultimately, we deliver the tech stacks in today's webinar title. So Loadspring turns 22 years old this year, and our focus on perfecting projects in the cloud, before this was called the cloud, has earned us a trust of top ENR firms and owners. Today, 48 of the 50 top design firms leverage Loadspring. And to them, we deliver hundreds of project-related applications for hundreds of thousands of users. Partnering with Loadspring lets you focus on projects while we manage your software application environments. Our concentration on the disciplines you see on the right side of the slide made us experts in AEC, and that's why 95% of our customers renew every year. Our specialization allows your internal organization to focus on software that's core to your IT business, such as your HR, your ERP, and your CRM applications. Now, these same Loadspring experts help you integrate these systems with finance and asset management systems, regardless of if they're on-premise or in another cloud. Now, many of our innovative EPC organization customers leverage Loadspring as their project delivery system to win more business. And they do this by defining our IT requirements in advance, pre-award, having received an award to then execute their projects, and in the end, they can hand off digital twins for asset and facility management to the owners. Our sole priority is to make sure that your teams have the access they need, ensure your applications are running at peak performance, and that your internal teams can count on us to take care of technical problems quickly and efficiently with the best of class security to make sure your data is protected. This is the Loadspring Cloud Platform for you, those of you who haven't experienced it yet. This provides you that single pane of glass where you can get to all of your project-related applications and data, present dashboards to users, provision and manage users, get support, even get training. Now, users get to work immediately with this platform simply by clicking on one of the icons in that left-hand panel. Those are the best-of-breed applications that you select for your projects. Now, you can also provision and manage users with these purpose-fit roles and permissions on demand. One study showed that an enterprise customer spent over 4,000 hours a year managing users. In their case, it translates to hundreds of thousands of dollars annually. Now, these are the top 10 reasons that customers tell us why they like Loadspring. I'm just going to highlight a few. Security is critical to protecting the confidentiality, the integrity, and availability of your data. Now, one 2020 study showed that the average person juggles upwards of 100 passwords. 100 passwords. Now, one example of how we strengthen but simplify your security posture is with single sign-on and multi-factor authentication systems to make it easy for the user. The other thing users need to be happy, they want to adopt the system, is they want something that's available, it's fast, and they want someone to call if things don't meet their expectations. So our support team is available 24/7. It's staffed with specialists in operating systems and networking and security and database and in the applications you have us deploy, and they call you back within 15 minutes. The average help desk is over 24 hours. Now, from an uptime perspective, we guarantee that your applications are available at least 99.9% of the time, and we measure performance at the application layer. So it's at the user layer. so that no users are left out standing, twiddling their thumbs when they press a button and they're waiting for a system to respond. Now, this slide gives you a sense on just some of our customers. Now, Loadspring's trusted on small and large projects around the world: bridges, rail, highway, pipelines, or you name it. Our platform meets the most stringent of their security requirements to protect critical infrastructure, but it's flexible enough for joint venture projects. And we see lots of these examples of organizations that partner with someone on one project, but they're competing with them to win another project. And this becomes a big security concern. So before I turn this back to Eileen, I'm going to tell you something that no one wants to hear. Your competitors have access to your networks and data, right? Your competitors have access to your networks and data. And the worst thing about it is you gave it to them. So there's an old Chinese proverb. It says the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. Stick around for the end of the webinar. We've got a free offer coming from Loadspring that will show you how we can help you correct that problem and get your security straight and plan your path to the cloud. Eileen?
Thanks, Jim. Wow. Now let's get to know our panelists. Joining me today are Brandon Barnum, Survey Chief at Granite Construction, Greg Ruby, CAD System Supervisor at the Minnesota Department of Transportation, and Chris Peterson, Project Development Director at the Utah Department of Transportation. As Granite Survey Chief, Brandon Barnum provides guidance and direction to field crews and surveying technicians. Through his extensive training in aerial mapping, terrestrial scanning, 3D modeling software, GPS, and traditional surveying methods, Brandon provides project owners with a clear project understanding and approach. Greg Ruby has 34 years of experience at the Minnesota DOT in both civil, technical, and IT-related work roles. His civil technical work experience includes bridges, photogrammetrics, and geopack microstation support, and construction vendor oversight. Chris Peterson joined the Utah DOT as an intern in 1996. He now serves as Project Development Director, where he oversees the statewide efforts involving structural, geotechnical, roadway, materials, and drainage engineering, project delivery, right-of-way purchases, property management, and civil rights. Is that all, Chris? As well as consultant and construction bidding for UDOT. After the presentations, we will take your questions, so please don't forget to submit them in the chat and Q&A section on your screen. Today's event is being recorded and archived on enr.com/webinars, so you can share this presentation with your colleagues. And now I will hand it off to today's first presenter, Brandon Barnum.
Good morning, everybody, or I guess good afternoon, depending on where you're at. As Eileen said, I'm the survey chief here at Granite Construction in our Reno, Nevada office. So I will be speaking to you today on what we're doing here in the Nevada region as far as our construction tech stack. And I wanted to start today with one of my favorite quotes. You can't build today's work with yesterday's machines if you expect to be in business tomorrow. And I think that's going to ring true, and really hit the tone as we go through this presentation today. So today I'm going to cover a little bit of the history as far as what we're doing here at Granite here in Nevada, specifically why I'm here and why my role exists as the survey chief and part of the technology construction group. I'm also going to go through how we're handling plan sets, those dreaded .ppr or paper files. I'm also going to touch on technology we're using to do our takeoffs, our design modeling, getting that information out into the field and then back into the office. I will then touch on our use of drones and remote sensing and how we're implementing that into our whole process, the whole construction process, and then also touch a little bit on the future tech as far as what we're looking at, down the pipeline, what's potentially out there and what we can utilize. I am going to keep this slightly high level as I do have to keep some of my secrets still secret. So why technology? Why are we doing what we're doing here in Nevada? So back in 2016, our regional manager at the time here at this office, who is now our CEO, he understood that there was a need for advancing in technology. He saw that the construction world was going to continue to advance. That if you weren't going to advance with the technology, you were going to be left behind. And so what he wanted to do was to dedicate and implement a construction technology group here in the Reno office that would be specifically dedicated to just that. They wanted to first take a look at drone usage. So that was the big item during 2016. There was they're fresh off the FAA approval of the 107, and so that was a huge commercial technology that was emerging. And so they wanted to start with that and really see what they could do in the construction world with that type of technology. As they found out how they could utilize and implement it, then moved on to looking how they could bring in modeling and takeoff in-house using the technology, the different softwares to have more control of that data and how that was going to be utilized and leveraged during the bid and build process. Then from there, it obviously transferred out into the field where, having all that information controlled, through the managing the survey aspect, the modeling aspect, all of the machine control, and being able to utilize that technology in-house was what the vision was. And so with that, there was a couple positions that had been created. And at the same time, I was out at the mining industry doing very much the same thing. So when a role opened up in 2018, I then came over to Granite and have been currently working to progress our company in that respect. So before we really jump into it, I do have a live poll for you guys. If you could respond, we'll do about 30 seconds here where, trying to see what software you're using to utilize, to view, to try and get the most out of your paper or PDF plan sets. Okay. Looks like we're kind of leveling out here, so we'll go ahead and close the poll and move on. All right, so it looks like the majority out there are using Bluebeam, which that is exactly what we're using in-house. So, as I mentioned before, our the dreaded .ppr files or the PDFs, they're not going away, but we're trying to do away with, when you have a question out in the field, how do you get that resolved? Looking at the plan sets, you've got your foreman or your superintendent, pulling out that big giant binder full of paper, trying to flip through the pages to see where you're at and try and find the answer. So what we're really leveraging here is a couple different softwares, and I kind of call this on the low tech side is having the ability to geo-reference our plan sets. So there's a couple options out there. We're currently testing and trialing a few and have some others that have been around for a bit, but a few are Project Atlas through Bluebeam. HCSS Plans has a couple, and then one of the newer kind of hybrid ones is called OnStation, where you can have a plan set repository and then also load up any sort of digital plan sets, which then you can overlay onto a satellite imagery as well as harness the geo-referencing or GPS of your phone or tablet. And some of these softwares or apps will actually filter out depending on your location on the job site. So if you're out there in a pre-bid walk or even as you're ready to start the project, you can physically locate yourself on the plans and see what needs to be done, what needs to be built, how it's all going to look, and kind of lay out in that 2D reference. So it's a very useful and helpful visualization for anybody that's trying to get a better idea of what needs to be bid or what needs to be built. And then also, what we've currently been doing as well, which I'll get into a little bit more in depth later, is being able to take these plan sets, these PDF plan sets, go out, fly an area with our drone, come back, process the data, and then drape our plan sets directly over the drone flight in a georeference fashion, where you can then pull that information into the office, view it up on the screen as a group, and really start to get an idea of how you're going to try and bid this thing. All right, so I've got another live poll for you. So what software are you using to generate 3D models and or takeoffs currently? And this is really where, the load of the current kind of technology is, I guess, is with these 3D models, getting these plan sets turned into usable 3D assets. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here. Looks like we've got most of the answers. All right, so Autodesk. So that is a very powerful tool. We do also use that in-house generally as a medium, however, to get from one software to the next. What we use here at Granite, specifically in this office, is AgTech. So we all know that during the bid process of pre-construction that these earthwork takeoffs are incredibly important. So again, coming from the survey side and getting these models built, this is really the world that I live in. Pre-bid or bid time is generating the proper quantities and getting these cut film maps. But what's most important is creating deliverables that can be leveraged and utilized in a much easier and more useful fashion, right? We all know that you can print out a spreadsheet with quantities and a paper cut film map, and that only gets you so far. So what we typically do and have been doing is obviously we're taking those 2D plan sets, those 2D CAD files, pulling them into AgTech, and then obviously elevating everything, building out the model so we can generate all of these quantities, cut fills, see where the dirt is coming from, where it's going to. And then from there, we're able to kick it out into a Google Earth format, which everybody has and everybody can view and everybody's comfortable with. So then that Google Earth file can then be pulled up during the bid process in the bid room when they're doing the estimating, and there's a metadata that can be embedded into it so they can click around, see the cut fill quantities, see all the colorations. As you can see in the bottom image, you can see that there is a plan set draped over it, so you include all the plan sets and gives you that visualization that's super important to getting a better understanding of how this project is going to be bid and how it's going to be built. To take it the next step, we're actually now starting to utilize, it's another AgTech product. It's in their realm of products, but it's called Smart Dirt, and it's essentially using the same technology where you're uploading a 3D model into a app that is overlaid with the satellite imagery, provides the cut fill quantities, provides the metadata, has the coloration to it. However, this is adding that extra geo-referenced aspect where you can actually go out into the field on the project. It'll geolocate yourself utilizing your cell phone or your iPad or whatever you're using, and it'll actually show you where you're standing, what that cut to fill is based off of whatever services you dumped into the app. You can even draw your own little boundaries, run your own little quantities as you're out in the field and getting that better visualization. So it's just that added level of information that you can then add to your toolbox there. And then again, take it one step further. During the takeoff process, what we're doing is going out and flying the area again, and we can implement that and bring that data into our takeoff data and ensure that we're having the most accurate existing information, that we can run different quantities and different sequences and see how we can improve the project in the bid process. And then if we win the project and it continues on within the Smart Dirt, you can continually add those flights into the app and update your cut fill quantities that can then be thrown into your foreman's hands, your superintendent's hands, so they can have that information right at their disposal out on the field to make better decisions. So then obviously we move from the takeoff aspect into the design model aspect as we win the job, start to build it. So this is where you start to get that information flow back and forth, right? So you now have taken that earthwork takeoff model and hopefully gotten some more up to date, maybe better plans, better CAD information where you can build an actual usable 3D model. And when I'm talking about 3D models here, you're going to hear a lot about design models, 3D models, BIM models. I'm talking about the 3D earthwork models that you go out and move the majority of the dirt with, put your structural sections in, your paving, things of that nature. So we are a very heavy Trimble user in this region. So all of our GPS and machine control is on the Trimble platform. So we can use a host of the Trimble ecosystem to utilize this data out in the field and back in the office. So obviously the first thing we can use it for is project planning and scheduling. Once we have this design model built, we can load it up in the office. We can have it loaded up with the drone imagery. We can take a look at where the dirt's going to be moved. We can look at how the haul routes might look if it's a heavy haul project, and really dive down into the nuts and bolts of how we're going to actually build this project. And then the next thing is getting this information out into the field. So you're obviously going to have a grade setter, surveyor out there running around with a GPS, a data collector. We use the whole host of TSC3s and TSC10s and all that GPS information. So if the project lends itself as far as the infrastructure and longevity, we'll actually set up the infrastructure where we can, utilizing the Trimble cloud, I can transfer the data if there's an update to a model, if there's anything that the surveyor or grade setter needs. I can push it out directly from the office out to the field without having to travel whatever the distance is out to him. And then same thing with the automated machine guidance. So most of our yellow iron is now GPS capable. So having that model directly on the machine and being able to push the models out to the machine and have those guys almost be self-proficient without having to have a grade setter stand right next to them the entire time and build most of the dirt work is very useful and is very very handy when working towards efficiency and cost savings. And then the same thing, if the project lends itself to it, we'll set that up to where as that machine's moving around, it can then transmit that as-built data back to us, where we can then update our as-builts, verify quantities, verify the design, and also again we'll fly the drone, run those against the as-builts, run those against the quantities, and run that against the design to ensure that everything is being built to specification during the process, during the project. That way there's no surprises towards the end. All right, and then I have one more poll for you guys. This is where we're going to get into a little bit of the UAV and drone talk. So are any you using, or what type are you of UAV and drone platform in your workflow? Okay, looks like we've got the bulk of the answers here. no, so not a lot of people are using UAVs or drones. So one thing I want everybody to think of when they think of drones, most people just think of flying drones, right? When you hear drones, you hear, you think of flying, or, drones can be anything that are flying, that are crawling, that are driving, that are floating. We've got, a series of UAVs, we've got some boats, there's some modern, some new stuff out there that rolls and crawls around. So, really a drone is essentially just a vehicle to attach some sort of sensor to, which obviously can be used during the pre-bid and construction, and then even post-construction phases, right? So you can capture, we're using drones to capture, as I've talked about, additional site information that may or may not have been included in the, the bid documents. If we're given, existing information that might be a few years old, or it's very sparse, or, it's just not that great or usable, we'll go out, capture the data, bring that back in, integrate that with the information that we do have to where we can, bid and build our work to the best of our ability, right? So it's providing that supplemental information on our own accord that we can use throughout the process. It can also be used for quantities and design verifications, as I mentioned before. So we heavily rely on drone usage during heavy earthworking projects, where we'll fly, at whatever frequency we deem necessary to quantify how much dirt has been moved. We'll also run the design versus each of the flights to see how much, is left to complete. And then we'll also use it to look for any places that we can potentially, improve. If there's, there's room to change, a slope here, change the design there, we can make those adjustments, and it can just provide that visual aspect again that is so important on these jobs. And then there's also obviously project documentation. So this is another big aspect of all jobs. You can use it just for photos and videos, and I've got a couple links there that you can see. You should be able to click on. The top one is the Las Vegas pedestrian bridge. It was a project we completed a couple of years ago, where I went out and simply did a 3D a couple of 3D panoramic photos, where you can then toggle back and forth and just get a really good idea of what's out there, what was built. It can be great for passing off to the owner at the end of the project for them. And then the bottom link, if you click on it, is another project we did, where it's showcasing how we did a mapping project, overlaid the design, the plan sets, like I was talking about earlier, where you can then see, how was everything built to plan? Was there deviations? Is there anything missing? Or you can make a lot of decisions back in the office or in the office trailer, as the project's going or as it's been done. And then finally, the future tech that we're looking at, we're looking at the whole spectrum of all the AR, MR, VR. There's some tools out there already through Trimble. Again, the one that you see there in the upper right-hand corner is the Trimble Sight Vision that we don't currently use in this office, but we do have some offices around Granite that have used that and has been key to success on some projects where it's using that augmented reality, overlaying, a BIM design or, underground utilities with that visual representation of what's going on behind it. They've actually now added that to the earthwork excavator machine control that we're going to implement, where that screen, that site will be directly in the cab for the operator to see what he's digging, with the design overlaid directly onto the real world application there. And then if you click on that, there's another link in there. This is a scan of just using. So if you have the new iPad or the new iPhone, they come with a LiDAR sensor, and this was just a quick walk around of a office trailer. So this is technology that's being released, that's out there, that can be utilized. You can scan this real quick, the free app, it'll process it right there, and then you can actually kick that over to somebody. If you open it with an iPad or an iPhone, it'll actually open up, and you can scale your space that you're in, and you can actually virtually kind of walk around the spatial area that the image had captured. And then obviously the virtual reality is something I see really the future of where this industry is going. If you look at that bottom picture, that's kind of where I picture the future of our estimating and bid rooms looking like, where everybody's sitting around a drone flight or a LiDAR scan, and everybody can add their notes and do measurements and touch and pull in the model and really have that hands-on respect to bid and do the best estimating and costing that we can do. But yeah, really it's all starting from the ground up, having everybody involved. From day one, implementing this technology is what I think is going to be the future and important in this industry. And so with that, I'm going to leave you with a video. And then I'll pass it on to Greg.
Thank you, Brandon. That was pretty interesting to watch. So I'm here today to help you understand how MnDOT is moving itself from where it's at today to more fully use digital models. And I'll do that in 4 parts: the vision, or where we're at today, some issues with using them, some work we're doing with partners, and then just a project we have underway that's kind of our look at the future. So like most organizations, based on Brandon's poll, thank you, we're still in the PDF sheets are the contract authority, signed, and they give the engineer a high level of control. And then those bid sets become part of the bid set with other supporting documents, contract provisions, special provisions, other types of standards or requirements within the contract. And you'll note there at the bottom that we are willing and able to supply models as reference data, but not yet as the contract authority. And from an internal staff poll we did, you'll see that when we asked them, what did you think we were ready to use for non-paper 3D BIM models, the highest level was as data supplied to the regular plan set, so reference data. And the second one was for electronic contractor bid model for all information in the contract. So we've got a mix of where we think our organization is at. We're trying different things on different contracts and in different district offices as the engineers have comfort doing so. And when we looked at the organization and said, which of the BIM concepts generally has your office or district participated in, obviously the highest one is machine control for grading or paving. We've been kind of an industry, or I should say a national investigator and leader in some of those areas. And the other two are the as-built, so we're getting more comfortable with that process, and also extracting CAD files to GIS. And that's part in service to an asset system. We're an asset owner. We need to get that data over to our asset systems. And GIS is one of those rising areas where we're storing it. We do have some other formal systems for that asset management, but GIS is becoming a fairly popular one for our organization. And then when we start looking ahead at 3D models as the full contract authority, the general concerns are that review, approve, and sign per state law and engineering board requirements. And in our organization, we have a lot of technicians creating the CAD elements, the CAD models that become the completed design model, and the engineer is not directly involved in creating those. So they've got a sensitivity about what is it they might be signing in an electronic data model as opposed to a sheet where they have a much higher sense of what's in there that they're signing. I think the second area we've got experience with is contractor trust and reliability. So when we've pushed our models out at times, we found out that the contractor may still actually go to the PDFs or sheets and extract and build their own models just for their own comfort or confidence. Or they may have tried one of our models and found it was potentially deficient in terms of accuracy or detail in some particular portion of the design where they were seeking it. And then I think the last one that Brandon kind of highlighted in some of his workflow was that tracking of model changes. So we can build one to design, we can pass it through bid-let. We often see things coming back in the award process where the contractors are saying, hey, we see this in your model. Is that really what you want? So there may be some modification there. And then out in construction, you may run into issues that were unpredictable or unknown, and you need to adapt and keep that model up to date, both from a perspective of record of what was done, but also in our case, we want that as an as-built. So capturing the as-built is a concern, and then capturing the corrections or modifications, which help us justify payments or adjustments in payments to the contractors. Some things we are seeing with them, with CAD models as we look into them more deeply, and we have been investing ourselves in getting ready for Open Roads Designer. We're in a pre-deployment phase, you might call it. CAD graphics are good, so it's great for three-dimensional spatial awareness of where the object is in space relative to all the other parts of the project, but they may need some interpretation for the item specifications. So you can see a line in there that says, I am a curb and gutter, I am a shoulder line. But it doesn't tell you much more than that unless you're reading some other additional data. And so we're seeing that metadata is more explicit. It defines the curb and type and possibly the material or fabrication methodology. We're going to invest ourselves and our time in building pick lists, user-based pick lists, or user pick lists on the back end for those pay items that lock in naming conventions, options for that particular pay item, and then posting that into the model. So it's directly data in the model that could get passed out to our construction partners in a full cycle. And we find that those standards make automation work a lot more reliable, and it also makes some of the reporting activities much more persistent and consistent, and which is what we're seeking. We want that uniformity in all of our project data sets going out, whoever has to use them, whether it's us, our contractor partners, or another state agency or government agency. We think it improves the QA/QC for the design estimation and other processes in that in Open Roads Designer, you can run a report. It allows you to extract out that information from the metadata. In parallel, you can define a view that reads that exact same extraction string. So you can now see a view that represents what it is you're seeing in the report, and you can do a much easier visual inspection against the quantities you may be reading. So we see adoption of ORD provides that metadata tools for our organization, and we are looking to promote that. We recognize other software systems have it, so we're trying to do it in a way that you might be able to implement in some other CAD system or modeling system. We're looking at the 3D models as the contract authority. So moving ahead, we know we need to set a clear baseline for our project deliverables. So if our consultants are being tasked with delivering designs, they know what it is they have to design and send in to us. And that our contractors have a comfortable and practical experience about what is a good field model. They can help us understand that, but also what they're getting meets that standard for them. In our potential look ahead in the next 2 to 3 years, we would envision 3D models within the contract as reliable data. That is, they are the source from which the sheets that govern are derived, or the other tabulations and quantities are derived from. And then in 3 to 7 years, we anticipate starting to deprecate out sheets from whatever is delivered and start relying on the model as the true contract authority. As part of that process, we're trying to keep an eye on things like the ISO standards, the ASHTOWare, and the IFC standards, because we want to try and be with the industry and our contracting partners in adopting standards that everybody in the community is going to be using. So when we're looking ahead with our partners, with our consultants, we're trying to get better at publishing out our CAD Workspaces because they have to use it too, but also in the beta phase, not just production, so that they can critique and comment what might be coming as a true next-gen production environment. So we're doing that actively right now as we get our ORD workspace together with our local ACEC community. And they're giving us some feedback about what they like, don't like, or things they think we may have gapped on. With our contractors, and I think Brandon's probably demonstrated this, they are waiting for us to go digital, but they want some trust in that. They want that model geometry to be useful to them. It can't just be something we're casually happy with for getting material or information out to a plant. It's got to be useful to them in the field. It can't just be a design model. It's got to be a construction model. And we see that the technology and automation are available. We just need to get better at using it. With our industry trade groups and vendor partners, we need to be more engaged with them in both proposing but also testing and adopting those standards and putting them through the rigors of live project use so that we get practical experience on that they're good for us or bad for us, or that our partners like them or don't like them. We want to be part of that loop and we want to be better at it. Internal to MnDOT, one of the things we have to get better at is cleaning up our internal processes and modernizing as soon as possible. So the e-signature is one of those things, usage in the contract, more dependency on it as the contract authority, but also standardizing our business process. We've got 25 years with one CAD system basically, and we've kind of all learned how to manipulate around it to get something else we want out of it. And that's resulted in a lot of variety in what our CAD files look like potentially, or what our output production plan sets look like. So we want to get better at standardizing it. And the last piece, just stop replacing paper with computers and improve the overall process. So we need to get better at understanding that the computers may hold that data usable for a bunch of different customers. We don't have to regenerate all those products for them. We can let them go to the source. And that's the sort of thing where we're getting rid of the paper process and letting that electronic data flow around to the customers as they need it, or partners as they need it. I'm just going to talk about this. I don't have a pretty picture. There's a link there for what we call the Trunk Highway 169 Elk River Freeway project. It's St. Cloud, Minnesota, central Minnesota. It's basically converting an at-grade to a freeway by adding 4 bridges. We are using a CMGC process. So WSB was selected as the lead consultant. They selected Ames Construction as the prime contractor. And they are using Bentley Systems Incorporated as a partner under what's called a success plan, and that's driving their design guidance, training standards, software and support. They're getting a lot of things solved right away. And this is entirely a 3D design process. So they're using Bentley Open Roads or Open Bridge. WSB and all of the partners are using that design software. In the case of MnDOT, only our bridge office is partnering in the project, and they are designing one bridge with the Open Bridge Modeler. If you're familiar with the Bentley products, that is the lower of the 2 bridge modeling softwares. It allows you to create the envelope, but not necessarily the details within the bridge structure itself. They are doing some of that work to learn it, but I don't think they're delivering that as part of the true construction plan. And so the things to point out about this project, and I think somebody had asked this in the chat, they are doing it all in the Bentley iCloud, or cloud, I should say, as the iTwin or Performance Twins or Design Twin. The branding name keeps expanding. So it's all of the project design elements, the roads, the bridge, the drainage, the utilities, right-of-way, ADA compliant things are being done in there. And it's a common and singular communication center against the model. So all the change requests, comments back and forth, actions to be committed, and outcomes are being tracked within that environment, in that cloud. Some of the things that have come along, they were able to expose spatial conflicts or undesired design elements very early in the process. So they were able to take a look at some bridges in relation to some existing utilities and determine that, hey, if we could lift that bridge, we don't have to move the utility. If we could move the road, we can fit in that pond a little bit better. And then it also allowed them to do some 3D modeling that you do iterations faster, so that just the fact that you could see the clashes wasn't good enough if you couldn't adapt the design. And what they found is that with the Open Roads and Open Bridge software, and I hate to sound like I'm selling for Bentley, but with those softwares, they were able to iterate through and modify the design, address the changes, and then see the balances in earthworks or where work activities might occur, and adopt a preferred design much earlier. And you'll see they adopted it at about the 20 to 30% design phase relative to MnDOT's normal process, which allowed them to start right-of-way acquisition and utilities relocation work far earlier in the process. Typically, MnDOT might not get to some of those activities until the 90% of design, because that's when the certainty arose to say, yeah, that's the design we're putting forth, that's the footprint of it, go out and act. So they were very pleased with that, and so were our partners out there in the right-of-way world who had to go out and negotiate those kinds of deals, or the utilities companies that had to make that move or move their objects around. And in program, they're looking at doing scheduling construction with the Bentley Synchro product, which is that 4D effort. So they're doing essentially a virtual build or virtual sandbox, so they can see which parts will be built when, where you're moving staff and equipment, when you're getting different phases done, when you can have that bypass road open, when you have to close it down and shift it. And then we're kind of excited to see where that's going. They're just in the middle of that right now, so I haven't seen anything come through with that yet. And that is what I've had to say today. And kind of along Brandon's quote, I've got if the agency didn't exist yesterday, what would we build today for the work it will do tomorrow? It's that look at modernizing the organization. And I thank you for your time today, and I'd like to pass you off to Chris Peterson from the Utah DOT, who's got even a better look at this type of future.
Thank you, Greg. Those are kind words. Utah, I just want to go through just for a few minutes where we've been and where we're headed. Brandon and Greg have covered a lot of some of the details associated with that, so I'm going to try and talk big picture relative to digital delivery and where and why, and as they've talked a lot about that. So historically, UDOT has lived in the same world as most every other owner, even the Department of Transportation, where in 2016, we would, if somebody asked, we would give them a 3D model, but we wouldn't guarantee it. We didn't put any trust behind it. We had no faith in it. We'd give it to them, and then the contractor, if they wanted to use it, had to go proof it and make sure that it worked for them.
Anyways, we've practiced or experienced in our journey from 3D to 2D to 3D. Back in about 2016, we started to give out our information as part of our contract, the 3D models. Next in our journey in 2018, we were able to do exactly as Greg talked about, and we created the model as a legal document and put that out as the contract. We were able to reduce plan sheets and save a significant amount of effort in the development of the plan sets. And eliminate the potential for error in the translation from 3D to 2D to 3D. Today, we're using models and our digital files to move towards what's called a digital twin, where we create a digital model for what is built. It goes beyond just as built, but it also adds the metadata to what was built and how it was built. So we're excited about how that works. So we had, to date, we've done 14 projects with the model as the legal document. We've done 5 via CMDC. We've done 9 via a traditional design bid build. Our inspection has been using rovers and mobile devices, and 9 of those have been fully constructed. We're happy about that. 7 were awarded when we didn't cut any sheets. Now that's a big thing. It's a significant savings in design time, and instead of having our designers spending time cutting sheets, they're able to spend time improving the model, making the model more effective, more correct, more current. And we've even done one with a bridge. We've learned a lot as we've gone forward, and as we continue to move forward, we need to integrate those lessons learned, absolutely. Out of 175, 180 projects we do every year, 14 is not a significant number, but we are progressing forward with that. And what we have learned is, as projects have used this technology, they've integrated it, they found the benefit, and we find them coming and asking us if they can do another one, a next one. And so it's starting to build somewhat of a snowball effect, and we're really pleased about that because we find benefit using digital delivery. Now, both Brandon and Greg talked about all the different types of software that are out there. This slide is not intended to promote any single one, but one of the challenges we find as we move forward is there's a lot of software out there. And at the start of the presentation, Jim talked about being software agnostic. And one of the challenges we have as we move forward is that's what we need to overcome, is the translation issues between one piece of software to the next piece of software, so that every user can use the one that has the features and does what works best for them, with somewhat of a generic or a universal translation. That's yet to come. There's a lot of work that's being done relative to all the different software, translation, and conversion issues that we see on each of the projects. But let's talk about our vision. Our vision is to go towards what's called a digital twin. So not just digital delivery for construction, not just digital as-built, not just digital design, but also a digital model that will include all of the metadata associated with what was built, pit sources, testing data, installation data, temperature data, any of the applicable data that might help us manage that asset in the future, so that after we build it, we can manage it, then we can plan and include that information in our planning so that we can decide how to best manage that asset. This is a significant effort. It's one that we are just getting our toes wet with regards to, and we're learning a lot. And so we have pursued some grants to help us implement this on some projects, and so we can learn. But we see significant value with this in the future, be able to better manage the significant assets that we have as a DOT, and to be able to better manage the program that we have and make the best use of our taxpayer dollars that are so limited. So a couple last things. First, Greg talked about this. There are a lot of different players involved in making this happen. Vendors, contractors, owners. In the slide, I got DOTs and FHWA, but we have owners, we have suppliers, we have prime contractors, we have subcontractors. And it's a huge lift to get everybody on the same page and making all that information come together. When we don't have standards, it becomes the wild, wild west. And it takes a significant amount of collaboration between all the groups to make sure that you aren't promoting one, doing a disservice to another, because everybody's bringing some value. And so trying to find a consistent and a common standard is a significant long-term vision that we have, and we're trying to work with all of our fellow states associated with that. And one of the things that we found is it's great if a prime contractor like a Granite or many of the others that are out there, they're on board and they want to go this way, but many of the subs have yet been able to accept that. So if you're in that boat, we encourage you to get involved. Help us know how to help you, and help us understand some of the challenges, some of the logistical issues you have in converting over into a digital world, because we've been doing this via paper, via 2D for over 100 years, and it's going to take a little bit of time, and there's a lot of growing pains associated with that. So why are we doing this? Well, I talked about the value of having a digital twin, but I think the other thing is first, we're looking for a workforce, and everyone in our industry is challenged with trying to find a workforce, be able to maintain and deliver the programs that we have. High school and college students, they expect this. They come out of college, and if you hand them a piece of paper, they look at you like, I went to school for what? And so this has become a big issue for us. We have learned that we need to be able to adapt our industry if we're going to be able to attract the up-and-coming generations. Also, paper and ink, it's just not the standard anymore. It's phones, tablets, devices. We found some incredible efficiencies with this, and some of us old-timers that have been in the business for a long time, we need to make the change. We need to move over so that we can take advantage of all the smart things that the kids coming out of school today can do. If we want to retain the workforce, if we want to attract the workforce, it's a digital revolution, and we need to retain that knowledge. All of the 30-year veterans are leaving, and we don't have the ability to have someone sit there with someone for the first 3 years of their career, be able to pass along the information. We need to be able to store it, put it somewhere we can get to it, and we can retain it, because it just the workforce just isn't the way it was when I came into work, and our employees no longer spend. We're lucky to get them to spend 5 years with a company, let alone 30 years with a company. So that's where we are headed, and that's why we're headed there. And I'm excited to be able to talk to you about what we're doing in Utah. If you want to, our website where we post all of our digital delivery information is digitaldelivery.utah.gov. You're welcome to go explore there, and it's got plenty of information about what we're doing today and some lessons learned of what we were doing in the past and we've moved on from. So with that said, I will turn it over to Eileen for questions.
Yes, and we have no time for questions, unfortunately. However, I want to thank you guys for your fantastic presentations. An hour is never enough time. And I want to thank our sponsor, Loadspring. And audience, you can submit your questions. Some of them were great. I wish I had time to ask them. Click on the email us button on your console, and we'll share them with the presenters so they can respond directly. And if you haven't filled out the survey, you will be redirected to it at the end of the webinar. Please fill it out. Your feedback is invaluable. And yes, we know about the audio issues. Please visit ENR.com webinars for the archive of this presentation to share with your colleagues, as well as information about our upcoming events. Make sure to tune in back for our next webinar, Work Life in the Remote World, Lasting AEC Changes from the Pandemic, airing September 15th at 2 p.m. Eastern. And before we wrap it up, I'll toss it back to Jim Smith. Jim?
Thank you, Arlene. Thanks again to ENR and everyone listening. I mentioned some scary stuff earlier when I talked about your competitors having access to your networks and data. And here's how Loadspring wants to help. We're offering a free cloud readiness assessment. So Lauren's going to help us over there. In the QA and chat box on your screen, you'll see a little handouts up at the top. She's shaking that now for us. If you click on handouts, you can get to the Loadspring offer. Now, we're providing a readiness assessment that reviews your organizational readiness, your application discovery and health checks. We're going through security models, integrations, evaluating your users and regions, your licensing and data sovereignty requirements, terabytes or petabytes worth of attachments, business intelligence, all the things that go around preparing you for this move. So when you get in there, you'll see it, how you can take advantage of this $1,000 value for this expert analysis. Please fill that out. Thank you all again for your time today. I look forward to seeing everybody in person sometime real soon.